I want to go over this article I found about this bloody autumn of Nauvoo. It's basically the history of violence of Mormons in Nauvoo after the martyrdom of Joseph Smith. So in the early church, what I always heard stories about were the pioneers were attacked and there was an extermination order by Governor Boggs. Joseph Smith was martyred. All these innocent religious people were being persecuted because they had the true church. If you look at some context, in 1845, Chicago, about the same size city as Nauvoo, had 4 peacekeepers for violence, but Nauvoo had over 500 peacekeepers because of all that violence, and some of these guys were the source of violence. I'm not going to read this, you can pause it, but basically there's a lot of tension between non-Mormons and the Mormons, and this one Mormon at the end says, "I feel like cutting their throats." So not a happy religious Christian body here. Some examples. September 14th, 1845, Nauvoo police flogged 3 men because they were not in good standing with the Mormon church, so I'd be flogged. September 16th, this guy Phineas Wilcox, 3 Mormons accompanied him to a Masonic lodge, but they stabbed him to death because they thought he was a Christian spy. Frank Worrell, he was one of the guards at Carthage jail, and he failed to protect the prophet Joseph Smith, so Porter Rockwell shot him out of his saddle. That same guy, Porter Rockwell, then went down to Warsaw, shot 4 unarmed men. September 18th, Andrew Dobenhire disappeared. Later on, his body was found in a shallow grave with a musket ball through the back of his head, so he was executed. Killed by the Mormons, says the gravestone. 1845, Mr. McBracking, accused of burning some Mormon homes. His friends found his body the next day, and they said after shooting him in 2 or 3 places, they cut his throat from ear to ear, stabbed him through the heart, cut off 1 ear, and horribly mutilated other parts of his body. Our holy men leaders, Heber C. Kimball and Orson Hyde, ordered the death of an apostate, Lambert Symes, who was never seen or heard from again. In response, 2,000 armed men marched on Nauvoo because of all this violence. So the Mormons skipped town. They scattered everywhere. Vast majority went with Brigham Young. It's always romantic to say they went to the Rocky Mountains, but they left the country, and that was Mexico. So they just had to get out. And, when I was growing up, I'm 7th generation Mormon. I had ancestors who started in New England, came all the way across, were in Nauvoo, and eventually ended up in Utah. I've always been proud of my Mormon pioneer heritage for their faith and resiliency, but now I wonder if some of them may have been murderous religious zealots.